So what if I told you that painting a bright green bike lane on your street has the exact same statistical impact on your safety as doing, well, absolutely nothing?
Right. I mean, it sounds completely counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Especially when you see how many of those, bright green lanes cities are rolling out literally every year.
Yeah, you see them everywhere now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But when you look at the raw data, the paint is really hiding a much more complex reality.
Welcome to today's Deep Dive. We are looking at honestly, just a monumental 2026 study from NYU. It was published in the journal NPJ Sustainable Mobility and Transport. And we're also pulling in some really sharp analysis from Bicycle Network. And, when we say monumental, the scale here is just wild.
Oh, yeah, it's massive.
The researchers analyzed a staggering 72 million trips from New York City's Citi Bike system, and they looked at a timeline spanning more than a decade, so from 2013 all the way to 2024.
Yeah, it is a massive amount of data. And, the sheer volume of that is what allows us to move past just anecdotes, right?
Right, like personal stories and stuff.
Exactly. Let's just get down to the structural truth of urban transit.
So the mission for our deep dive today is to take those 72 million trips, to really look at them and uncover what type of infrastructure actually gets you and me out of cars and onto bicycles.
Yeah.
And maybe even more importantly, we want to reveal the surprising demographic truths that are kind of, hidden in the data, like who is actually benefiting from these urban upgrades and, well, who is being completely left behind.
That's the real core of it, yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this. The NYU study basically categorized the city's cycling infrastructure into three pretty familiar tiers.
Right, the ones we see every day.
Exactly. You have the gold standard, which is protected bike lanes with literal physical barriers. Then you have standard painted lanes. And finally, you have sharrows.
Ah, sharrows. Those are the stenciled bicycles just painted onto a shared car lane, right?
Yeah, the ones where you're just sharing the lane with a delivery truck. So the researchers started by looking at a really straightforward before and after picture.
Right. They just tracked the number of bike share trips starting at a given station in the 12 months before a new bike lane was installed nearby.
Okay.
And then, they compared it to the 12 months after. Just a simple comparison.
And at first glance, the numbers look like a massive win for city planners across the board. I mean, the data showed that when a protected bike lane went in, there was an 18% jump in bike share rides.
Which is huge.
It is. But then when a painted lane or a sharrow went in, there was still a 14% jump. So, a 14% increase just for the cost of a few buckets of paint. That seems like an incredible return on investment.
It does. But what's fascinating here is how easily raw data can deceive us if we don't, apply the right statistical pressure.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The researchers recognize that an initial 14 or 18% jump might just be, a mirage.
Because city governments don't operate in a vacuum, right? They don't just put on a blindfold and throw darts at a map to decide where to put a new bike lane.
Exactly. They usually place them in neighborhoods where cycling is, already surging.
Right, or maybe in rapidly developing areas where you have an influx of new residents who are actively lobbying their city council for bike infrastructure.
Exactly. So you have to ask a really crucial question. Is the painted lane actually causing the 14% increase in rides? Or
did the city just happen to paint a lane in a neighborhood where ridership was naturally trending upward anyway?
Yes, exactly that.
Yeah.
So to untangle that, correlation from actual causation, the methodology gets incredibly rigorous.
Okay.
The researchers utilized a statistical technique called propensity score matching.
Propensity score matching. So I imagine this works a lot like a clinical drug trial, right? If you want to know if a new pill actually lowers blood pressure, you can't just give it to a random group of 20-year-olds and then compare them to, 60-year-olds taking a placebo.
No, of course not.
You'd need two groups with the exact same age, weight, and pre-existing conditions. So how did they build a clinical trial out of city streets?
Well, they did it by creating these perfect, apples-to-apples comparisons using urban data.
Okay.
They took the Citi Bike stations that received a new bike lane, and they basically searched for a twin station somewhere else in the city that did not get a bike lane.
A twin station.
Yeah. And to qualify as a twin, the surrounding neighborhood had to match on this Really exhaustive list of variables. I mean, they controlled for total population, population density, median household income.
Wow, so really getting into the weeds.
Oh, absolutely. They also controlled for the racial makeup of the neighborhood and even the percentage of people with a bachelor's degree.
So they are making absolutely sure they aren't comparing like a super wealthy, high density neighborhood in Manhattan to a quiet, lower income suburb out in Queens.
Exactly. But they went even much deeper than just demographic basics.
Really? Like what?
They controlled for the number of other city bike stations within 200 meters. So that accounts for network density. And get this, they even controlled for the number of dining establishments within 200 meters.
Oh, that makes total sense because points of interest drive travel behavior, right?
I got it.
Like people bike to get a coffee or to go to dinner. So a high density of restaurants indicates a vibrant, active destination, regardless of the transit infrastructure.
Precisely. So after all that filtering, the researchers found 234 pairs of these twin stations.
Okay.
Identical neighborhoods. I mean, same density, same income, same number of cafes. And the only difference was the intervention. One got a bike lane and one didn't.
That is wild. Okay, so then we get to the final piece of the puzzle, which is the difference in differences analysis. Walk us through how that actually works in practice.
Sure. So difference in differences is a way of tracking the parallel trends over time between those two groups. Instead of just looking at the absolute number of riders,
Right.
you look at the rate of change.
Right.
So if both our twin stations are naturally growing at, let's say, 5% a year, and we add a bike lane to one of them, does its growth rate suddenly spike to 10% while the twin stays at 5?
Oh, I see.
Yeah, by tracking the divergence in their trajectories, it isolates the true causal effect of the bike lane itself. It filters out all the broader citywide trends.
Okay, so the moment of truth. We started with paint giving us a 14% boost in the raw, unadjusted data. When we isolate the actual causal effect using these identical twin neighborhoods and track their parallel trends, what happens to the numbers?
The effect of the painted lanes and the sharrows vanishes
Wait, vanishes.
completely.
Yeah.
Statistically speaking, compared to their twin stations with no bike lanes at all, the stations that got painted lanes or sharrows showed zero significant increase in ridership.
Wow. So the paint is statistically meaningless.
It really is. The only infrastructure that demonstrated a true causal effect on increasing bike share trips was the protected bike lane.
The physical barrier.
Yes, when a physical barrier went in, it generated an average of 379 additional rides per month per station compared to its identical twin.
Man, it really validates the frustration cyclists have been voicing for years. I mean, a painted line on a four-lane avenue is essentially a placebo policy.
That's exactly what it is.
It makes the local city council look incredibly proactive. Like they cut a ribbon, take a photo for the local paper, and announce, hey, we built 10 miles of new bike lanes.
Yeah, and it's cheap.
Right. It's cheap, and it avoids the brutal political battle of removing parking spaces to put in concrete barriers. But the data definitively proves it provides zero behavioral change for the community.
Yeah, the bicycle network analysis really hits heavily on this point. Despite years of investment, much of what gets touted as cycling infrastructure is literally nothing more than paint.
Yeah.
And it simply does not provide the level of safety, whether that's perceived safety or real safety, that is required to change human behavior on a mass scale.
So since the concrete bumpers are the only thing genuinely changing behavior and getting people out of cars, the next logical question is, well, who are these new riders?
Right.
Like when you put up a physical barrier, who suddenly feels comfortable hopping on a city bike?
Well, the researchers overlaid census data to see where the protected lane spikes were actually happening. And the demographic shift is just striking.
What did they find?
They found a massive causal spike in ridership in census block groups, with the highest percentage of residents aged 60 to 79.
Okay, the 60 to 79 demographic, wow. That really shatters the stereotype of the urban cyclist as, some 25-year-old flying through traffic with a messenger bag.
It really does. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the psychology here makes perfect sense.
Also.
Well, older populations are highly sensitive to safety concerns, right? And to physical vulnerability. Studies consistently show that older adults are very interested in cycling for exercise or, local errands.
Sure.
But they're entirely unwilling to mix with heavy, fast-moving automobile traffic. I mean, a painted lane still carries the very real risk of a driver texting and swerving 3 feet to the right.
It's totally the bowling with bumpers effect.
Bowling with bumpers.
Yeah, think about it. If you take someone unconfident to a bowling alley, They might refuse to play because throwing a gutter ball is frustrating and embarrassing. But the second you inflate those little bumpers in the gutters, they'll play all afternoon.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
Because they know for a physical fact they aren't going to roll into the gutter. So protected bike lanes are basically urban bumpers. The physical barrier just completely removes the ambient stress of the environment.
That is a perfect analogy. And we see this exact dynamic playing out at a national scale in northern European cities.
Right, like the Netherlands.
Yes. In places like Amsterdam and Copenhagen, highly significant percentages of older adults bicycle daily. It's just woven into the fabric of their daily routine.
Right.
And it isn't because the Danish elderly are inherently braver than Americans.
Right.
It is owing to expansive, high-quality, physically separated infrastructure that literally doesn't require bravery to navigate.
That makes me wonder, have we historically been designing American cities exclusively for the young and the reckless? I mean, if our transit infrastructure only functions for people willing to risk their physical safety in mixed traffic, we are effectively shutting out entire generations of residents.
We really are.
And as the U.S. population ages in the coming decades, building cities that demand bravery just to get to the grocery store seems like a catastrophic planning failure.
It is a profound oversight. But while the physical bumpers work wonders for older adults, the 72 million trip data set reveals they do not work universally.
Oh.
And that introduces really the most complex finding in the entire study.
Right, because dropping 1 million tons of concrete across the city doesn't benefit every neighborhood equally. And I think this is where the story shifts from physical engineering to social engineering. So we've established that protected bike lanes cause an overall increase in ridership. But when the researchers analyzed the racial demographics of those census blocks, they found that this causal effect was only present in areas with the lowest percentage of Black residents.
Yeah. In census blocks with a high percentage of Black residents, the installation of a state-of-the-art, physically protected bike lane resulted in zero statistically significant increase in ridership.
Wow, zero.
Zero. The hardware's there, but the behavior isn't changing.
I imagine the immediate pushback from urban planners would be to look at other socioeconomic variables, right? Like,
Sure.
could this lack of ridership growth simply be a proxy for income disparities or maybe education levels in those specific census blocks?
The researchers actually anticipated that exact critique.
Did they?
Yes, and they ran highly rigorous placebo tests to isolate the variable. They systematically proved that this lack of ridership growth was not tied to median household income. It was not tied to education levels, like the percentage of residents with a bachelor's degree. And it was not tied to the percentage of Hispanic residents in the area either.
So it's very specific.
Yes, the null effect is uniquely and specifically tied to communities with high proportions of Black residents.
Okay. So we have the gold standard of infrastructure. The physical barrier is installed, the bumpers are up, but the community isn't using the bike share system. Let's delve into the mechanisms behind this.
Sure.
I would assume the barrier to entry isn't just the physical road, it's the logistics of the bikes themselves, right?
Right.
Because for a long time, accessing a bike share required a smartphone and a credit card.
This raises an important question. Why isn't infrastructure enough in this case? The study really delves into existing scholarship to explain the systemic barriers at play here, and financial exclusion is absolutely a primary factor.
Like you were saying.
Yeah, historically, bike share systems operate via card-based banking and smartphone apps. So, in communities with higher rates of unbanked households, the physical bike might be sitting right there on the street, protected by a beautiful concrete barrier. But the digital lock is essentially impenetrable.
Because they can't pay for it.
Right. If you operate primarily in a cash economy, a credit card-only kiosk is a hard stop.
The physical proximity of the bike just doesn't matter if the financial key is out of reach. But it goes deeper than just the transaction, doesn't it? Does the study touch on how cyclists are treated by traffic enforcement in these areas?
It does.
Because, a concrete curb protecting you from a delivery truck doesn't really protect you from a police cruiser.
You've hit on a massive point there. The researchers point to the very real impact of discriminatory policing practices as a massive behavioral deterrent.
Wow.
There is consistent documented evidence cited in this paper that cyclists of color face disproportionate policing, harassment, and traffic stops.
So it's a known, measured issue.
Absolutely. When riding the bicycle makes you a highly visible target for a pretextual traffic stop, the calculus of commuting changes entirely. A physical barrier protecting you from cars does absolutely nothing to make you feel safe from law enforcement.
Yeah, it basically transforms a bicycle from a convenient mode of transport into a liability.
Exactly.
And what about the actual implementation of the lanes? Because the process of putting down these barriers usually involves tearing up the street, removing parking, and changing traffic flows. How does the community engagement process differ in these neighborhoods compared to others?
The contrast in planning processes is honestly stark. In wealthier, predominantly white neighborhoods, bike lanes are often the result of proactive community engagement.
Like town halls and stuff.
Yeah, town halls, advocacy groups lobbying the city council, a sense of collective ownership over the street space. But in many minority neighborhoods, there is a deep historical lack of community input.
So it's just forced on them.
Yeah, the infrastructure is often totally top-down. The city simply arrives, removes crucial street parking that residents actually rely on, and drops a bike lane without prior consultation.
So instead of being viewed as a neighborhood amenity, it's viewed as a hostile imposition.
And often it is seen as an explicit precursor to gentrification.
Oh, right.
When longtime residents see expensive new infrastructure appearing overnight without their input, the assumption, which is often validated by historical precedent, by the way, is that the city is preparing the neighborhood for a different, wealthier demographic that is expected to move in.
Wow.
So it signals displacement rather than investment in the current community.
It's the difference between hardware and software, basically. You can hire the best engineers in the world to build a state-of-the-art, multi-million-dollar bridge. That's the hardware.
Right.
But the bridge is entirely useless to the community if there is a toll at the entrance that requires a bank card they don't have, or if there is a security guard on the bridge who specifically targets and harasses them while they try to cross.
Sure.
Or, if the construction of the bridge demolished local homes without asking anyone.
That's a great way to look at it. Infrastructure never exists in a vacuum. The hardware relies entirely on the social software operating around it.
And the software in this context means equitable pricing structures and actual cash payment options for the unbanked. It means addressing discriminatory policing practices so that a simple commute doesn't turn into a confrontation.
Yes.
And it means deep, proactive neighborhood engagement where city planners actually ask the community what they need before a single drop of concrete is poured.
The researchers explicitly emphasize this in their conclusions. They note that while systems like Citi Bike do offer membership discounts, planners must work much harder to ensure bikeshare is a viable, attractive option with a specific emphasis on communities of color.
It takes actual work.
It takes a lot of work. That requires promotional events, secure bike parking, and ensuring marginalized voices wield actual power during the planning phase. Simply dropping the physical infrastructure into a neighborhood only serves a very specific slice of the demographic pie if the systemic barriers remain intact.
Okay, so as we synthesize this huge 72 million trip mountain of data, a few absolute truths emerge of how we move through our cities. First, not all bike lanes are created equal. Paint is just paint. Whether it's a solid green line or a stencil of a bicycle, the data proves it is a statistical placebo.
Yeah, that's undeniable now.
Physical barriers are the only proven way to causally increase ridership and provide the ambient safety required to get older demographics back on a bicycle.
And the second major takeaway is that even the absolute best infrastructure, the finest concrete barriers money can buy, cannot override systemic social barriers. You simply cannot engineer your way out of social inequality just by altering the physical streetscape.
So, to you listening, let's bring this back to how you experience your daily commute. The next time you're walking or driving through your city and you see that brightly painted bike symbol in a shared road or a thin white line running right next to 50-mile-an-hour traffic, you will know exactly what you were looking at.
Right.
It's a feel-good measure. It looks progressive on a city planning brochure, but the hard, rigorous data proves it doesn't change human behavior, and it certainly doesn't keep people safe.
I will leave you with a final thought to mull over. This study proves that when it comes to transportation, humans require literal physical barriers to genuinely change their travel behaviors.
Yeah.
We intuitively understand the physics of our environment, and we are not fooled by paint. So it makes you wonder, what other areas of our daily city lives, like our parks, our public squares, our community spaces, are being guided by subtle, invisible paint, rather than the actual structural support we need to truly thrive?
Because at the end of the day, no one wants to trust their safety to a bucket of green paint.
Virtual's me.